Hello, I'm Flora speaking out, and it's good to be back with you again after these weeks. And thank you very much for joining me. Yeah, new year, new calendars, new diaries, new resolutions. Oh, and of course, the champagne. We won't forget that. But what particularly I associate with the new year, besides all those other things, is I've been thinking about bells. It used to be the custom to ring in the new year. There were some churches actually that, in my youth, that rang all New Year's night, from midnight till sunrise, as a matter of celebrating new beginnings. Bells used to be much more important in my youth than they are now. And they were even more important in earlier ages. Bells kind of drew the community together before there were telephones, of course, internet, anything like that. Bells rang out for, well, church, as I said. School bells are very important. Court bells, fire bells, bells that told you the time for people who didn't have clocks or watches in earlier days. Wedding bells, as I said. Bells that would celebrate special occasions. For example, when I got married, a friend of the family, who was a carillonneur, rang the wedding march as I went into the church as his gift to me. I've never forgotten that. And when I took my firstborn to be baptized, the bells rang for that too. Bells would ring in cities to honor special people. It was the great community center, the bells. And of course, before there were newspapers or radios, bells would call people together to hear the news of what was going on in not only the city, but the nation. Bells warning about disease, fire. Bells warning about war being declared. Bells warning about the approach of the enemy to the city. It was a way to get everyone's attention. I'm thinking of a very special bell right now. You've undoubtedly heard of it in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the famous Liberty Bell, which is now under the National Park System of Protection. It was located in the Philadelphia courthouse way back in the mid-1700s and was present at the formation of our nation, Declaration of Independence, drawing up of the Constitution. And that bell had an engravement on it, a scriptural verse. Proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants. Proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants. It rang faithfully for 90 years, and then in the 1840s, it developed a crack, couldn't ring anymore, but it was enshrined for the nation as a symbol, a center, icon really, a rallying point for our nation's independence based on justice, freedom, equality. It became a center of, a real center, almost spiritual symbol for the abolitionists who rose up against slavery before the Civil War. It became a great iconic symbol for women working for the vote, the suffragists. Later became, in the '70s, a great symbol for civil rights. And I think we need to enshrine our Liberty Bell again. A bell to sound warning, a bell to sound danger, a bell to ring for what we stand for in this nation, its foundation. It needs right now to ring the warning that our nation is becoming a predator, worse than it's ever been in my lifetime. Recent warning signs that our bells are ringing. For 2026, which seems to be, though it seems incredible, worse than 2025 as far as the rogue elephant of an administration goes, plans to strip citizenship, planning for 100 or 200 denaturalizations per month, people who are citizens. Take away their citizenship. Another warning bill plans this year to hire bounty hunters to augment what the ICE agents are doing. Another warning bill, freezing $10 billion for child care, poor families, in 5 Democratic states: Colorado, California, Minnesota, Illinois, New York, all Democratic states claiming fraud going on. Apparently no Republican states have any fraud going on in the child care funds. You know, I've never known in my lifetime such hostility growing between the states and the federal government, between cities and the federal government. The recent shooting in Minnesota of a person protesting the ICE action. I've never seen this. All right, another warning bell. The attack on Venezuela, the kidnapping of its president, admittedly an evil man, but the whole nation. Trump now plans, to use his own language, plans to run the country. And in his own language, manage the oil. And we've begun stopping ships from other countries who are dependent on Venezuelan oil. We are almost at the verge of armed robbery. We are in defiance of international law. Another warning bell, threats of military action against Cuba, Colombia, against Mexico. And what perhaps scares me the most, the open discussed plans to annex Greenland, which belongs to Denmark, by force if necessary. Let me read exactly what Stephen Miller, a great power behind the throne, had to say about that. I wrote it down word for word. Nobody's going to fight the US military over the future of Greenland. We live in a world, in the real world, that is governed by strength, governed by force, that is governed by power. These are the iron laws of the world since the beginning of time. A direct quote from a man who has enormous influence over the president. By such a quote, force, iron laws, the administration reveals its vile, naked face. is underlying all this? I wonder if some of you remember, I haven't heard anyone quote it, back in 2016, when Trump was running for president, this is something he said, and somehow it's stuck in my head. I will be so good with the military, it will make your heads spin. I will be so good with the military, it will make your heads spin. He sees a picture of himself as a strong, unquote, unquote, strong man. A strong man like Maduro, perhaps, or Putin, dominating his own special personal army to be the master of the Western Hemisphere. And his goons are backing him up in his fantasies. Back to bells. In ancient times, it was thought the very vibratory sound of the bells drove out evil spirits. It was a spiritual force, not just a matter of decibels. Who are the bells ringing as a spiritual force upon which this nation was founded? Perhaps the 300 federal judges now actively opposing the administration's mandatory detentions of many innocent people thrown into handcuffs, covered wagons, put in detention without lawyers, medical service. 300 federal judges. They themselves are bells that are ringing. And you and I, every time you and I stand up against this vile administration, we become bells, ringing bells. Whether we speak, write, protest in the streets, pray. As young people, we were urged to memorize a poem at the New Year. You may have heard it. Tennyson wrote it about 150 years ago for in honor of the New Year. Ring out, wild bells, to the wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out, wild bells, and let it die. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Ring out the shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust for gold. Ring out the 1,000 wars of old. Ring in the 1,000 years of peace. Well, my friends, ring out, you wild bells. I will too. See you next week. Thank you for coming.